Dr. Ramalingam,
Yeah.
nice to see you after quite some time.
Yes,
It's
sir.
always nice to have a conversation with you. Welcome to Professor Vrashabharaj Jain. A hearty welcome to Mr. Paul. It's really heartening to see what's happening in education now, despite all this COVID strain that everybody is going through, particularly the students as well as faculty, the entire fraternity of educators. This is also the time when this national education policy has approved by the cabinet in July 2020, and the implementation has been kind of held back to some extent, I believe, because of COVID. And now that things are starting back, hopefully it should be we'll be seeing a lot of implementation of this also. National education policy is something that's is going to be expected to be a great game changer. After 1986, when the National Policy on Education 1986 was tabled and approved, and later tweaked in 1992, there has been no major changes in the education policy. So this 2020 change is going to be phenomenal, and it might take a few years when the full-fledged implementation of that would happen. And I think it's not going to be easy. I mean, there's going to be there are a lot of stakeholders involved, of course, in education at school as well as in college level. I'll not take more than 5 minutes. Just explain what would be the kind of changes, and how can these changes actually be beneficial to society, and how can these changes be aided by uh, principles in NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, and that is where our experts here, all of you are experts in this field, and I have understood a little bit of NLP, and I think been appreciating, and Mr. Paul has been telling me that many of the things that I say rings of NLP. I'm not very, I personally am not sure what that really means. To some extent, yes, it's about reinforcing certain language systems in our neural network that reside in our brain and elsewhere in the body. And it's essentially it's about programming ourselves with certain kind of language system, which is fundamental to humanity as humans. We are where we are because of the language that we create for ourselves, as I understand. Coming back to this whole idea of national education policy, how will we make our students really curious? How are we going to make them critical thinkers who would ask questions, and where the locus of control will be from within rather than be outside, where they are governed by external inducements of examinations and all the other things that we go by normally. So this is one of the things that national education policy is trying to promote, essentially making students experimental, curious, risk-taking, and imagine new things and work towards those areas. The means to achieve this, the policy also states we have to actually let go of rote memory, which has been the hallmark of most education evaluation systems in our country. Emphasis on problem identification rather than simply solving the problem, and opportunity spotting. So issue, how do we identify an issue, which may be a problem identification or an opportunity. More emphasis on humanities and sciences, which essentially tell us why we are in the fundamentally we are doing certain things, while science is about means, how do we achieve certain things. So this aspect of why we are doing things is probably not questioned and asked by students to the extent that they should, especially at higher levels of education like post graduation or PhD and so on. Now, professional courses will continue to be important. However, there is a tacit admission that professional courses have been given so much importance that other forms of education, whether it's basic sciences or whether it is humanities, have not been given adequate importance. And there is also something about how to separate professional education from professional conduct. In other words, how do we have professionals who are really controlling these professions be one body, while educators really say what is really critically look at these professions and look at improvements rather than perpetrate the status quo. So these are resident in national education policy, and there is, along with this also, there is a lot of emphasis on new forms of educational valuation. There would probably be a clearance test for all these professional courses, while micro assessments and year-end uh, evaluation, uh, I would say, drama that's going on in universities may have to be questioned. There'll be more continuous assessment rather than evaluation, whereby students indeed get feedback on their assessment, on their performance, and means of improving their performance, rather than have, kind of an industrial age production of students through a 3 or 4 year old, production process, batch process of, so that you give them more time and have a choice-based credit system. For instance, somebody could take 5 years to do a 4 year program, or 4 years to do a 3 year program, or maybe even less if the person is really going to concentrate on education rather than do other things. So this requires also institutional superstructure. That is also mentioned. They're talking, this whole idea of affiliation, which is essentially to create working skilled clerical class of people. That will also is also being questioned. And so this whole policy is talking about affiliation system to be entirely discontinued, and a national research foundation coming in, and even students at undergraduate level being research oriented and inquiry oriented, rather than be answering pat answers for pat questions. So this is basically the whole thing. So now, how can NLP really help in terms of implementation of these lofty ideals from the perspective of regulator, from parents, society, from the perspective of employers, and the educational community, academicians, and of course, most importantly, students. So this is a very tall kind of a demand from anything, but I'm just laying out these are the possibilities. Even if you can make a small impact on any one of these stakeholders through, NLP, which is highly lauded and which is seen to be extremely effective at individual levels in terms of removing compulsive behavior, in terms of creating higher performance, in terms of understanding other people, in terms of having better sociality among individuals. If any of these can be touched, even in a what should I say, experimental way, so that it can grow into something bigger as we go, is most welcome at this point in time. So that's why I think NLP is critical. I think for changing the mindset of our the academia in general, as well as students, and get to some kind of embracing of change, embracing of ideals that we have in our mind, to say that these things are indeed practical if all of us are together in it. I think that is the whole idea. I may have covered certain things, but of course, I will leave it to you all to further take this. Because as parents, of course, many of the people are here educators, but as parents and educators, we know what we want our students to be, or our children to be. But sometimes we are, we don't have the tools to actually go and make a change, which I think can be provided by, at least partly by NLP.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Because I have not fully read the national education policy. Great educationists like you would have already gone through it and understood it. In a nutshell, you have made a presentation. Presented to me in a way, linking it to what I have read in newspapers. And one thing I could do as a person who is in the field of behavioral sciences, I have counted how many houses you have told. And you have told 9 houses. No what, no why. You see, now that itself is telling the focus of this education, the policy success is going to be on how, not on what or why. And because a scientist has been headed it Kastur Rangan, and also the research inquiry, all that is rather than inquiry, at least the word inquiry has been used. I am very happy about that. And going into oneself and looking at it. Looking at the whole issue. It's not looking at the part issue, making it plus this, plus this, plus this. Wholly, it is addressed. And so from that point of view, it is in tune with NLP's approach. NLP is a holistic thing. Whole is in part is in whole. Whole comprises of part, and at the same time, part comprises of whole. Quantum theory, they say, in every cell Ramalingam lives. This aspect of development now he has to focus on every cell rather than only one organ called brain. So from the brain, now the shift has to be made towards mind. And mind is the metaphor of brain. And what happens and how things are happening through the brain in the neurological system and reaches out to every cell of sensing as well as connecting it to cognition. Both, if it is not taking place, education will not be holistic in today's demand. The demand today is, another thing is, from 1986 to this day, we never thought of changing the educational approach. And perhaps every year, syllabus will be reinforced. One or two things that has happened in between when the election has happened, then we will tell who is the new president or prime minister. That will be only updation of the content. In the process, how much of change has taken place? To my knowledge, it is not very significant. And that's why people are searching for some learning outside the field of academic institutions. And those who gone beyond academic education have made a mark in the society. Academicians create successful people and remain in the same academic institutions. In fact, the essential people who are in the teaching community and the integration of teaching community with the society, if it has to take place, a holistic approach has to happen. And the first responsibility of a teacher in one of the schools when I went, and I asked what is the most important responsibility, they listed about 10. Then one thing is, I told it, the first responsibility of a teacher or a trainer is learning, I told. Huh? Yeah, that is essential. See, what you have learned in the last, madam, what you have learned in the last 1 year, it is TVS school. And because I am a consultant for TVS for the past 25 years, they are enduring me. And I am endearing also. So like that our relationship continues. And they sent me to their school, TVS school in Osu. And very interesting dynamics are, the people go by what they are teaching. And why it is important. Why means this the person should become an engineer, person should become a collector. And even career planning starts when the child is 3 years old. Are you going to become a doctor like your uncle or engineer? Career planning, they say in the postgraduate course only it is taking place. It is not so. Even when in the child career, I used to say, career planning starts when you are 3 years old. That time itself, somebody will be referred as a person who had been successful. And like that, only parents, grandparents, and all that are developing. And it starts at home. And it then goes into the social birth of school. First is cellular birth, then physical birth, then psychological birth, then another birth. So many births we are taking. Social birth. In social birth, the education is an important entry. They're entering. From that moment, how the development in that person as a person takes place is more important. From there the NLP can play an important role. And one thing that is very important for human life, for self-growth as well as for personality, or any personality is there because other people are there. It always takes two to understand one and to have a personality. If another person is not there, there is nothing called personality. So if another person has to be there, communication is important. The communication is not only expressed language. Language has its own root. The real linguistics are embedded in our mind, in our system. That is, as the internal representation, it is already, we have created it and we are owning it from our own potential. Potential is always there. And we have created, how do we respond to a situation? That is the critical thing of learning and education. How do I respond to something that is happening? By my choice, certain people respond to certain things. And the second thing is interest and willingness. Third thing is of how these things are processed inside me so that it goes into my layers of records. They are called as internal representations. And they only ultimately they create some maps, and this becomes my map of my mind. That in that map there are some routes for my progress, for my safety, for my development. Organism has its own responsibility to protect itself and grow. This nature is protection and growth. What happens is by the way we deal with our own mind, we are restricting ourselves. So that is the most important aspect of NLP. And another thing is the focus is on process rather than content is there. Any content that is given, unless it is processed, after processing it, again, if it is not theorized and become a content, the cycle continuously, if it is not taking place, learning does not take place. Only memory and recall becomes the most important thing. And you see, the brain, though brain has four functions. One is perceiving and interpreting. Second is memory and recall. Third is analyze and judge, logical reasoning, etc., etc. We call this as intellect, intelligence, etc. Cognitive intelligence, IQ, all that is there. And the last but not the least is imagination and looking beyond. It is mostly we experience every night in our dreams. And every week we are also producing a novel serial, like a TV serial. Every week one serial we are producing in our dreams, but we are unable to recollect because our conscious mind is totally suspended at that time. Only unconscious is awakened. Unconscious is 24 by 7. Conscious mind is all the time other than sleeping time. And sensitivity happens occasionally. This is how we are living our life. How to improve our sensitivity, how to expand our consciousness so that the unconscious will come to our help and provide more opportunity for us to explore ourselves. This is the basic process, sir. That's why Neuro Linguistics program. The neurological system that comprises even brain, biologically brain, but metaphorically mind, and that is neurological. Then linguistics, we are all born with the language. See, original thought about in the last 15 years it has changed. Noam Chomsky, he has told languages were not created by us. Our languages are created, but linguistics, we are born with it. All the whole world, all races. Ever since, if we have come out from the monkey, or I do not know, monkeys will get angry. So, and they are better than many times than us in wisdom. So, we have developed our own mother tongue from that basic linguistics, language that we are born with. You see, sir, for millions of years, the languages have been evolved. And while evolving this language, every language has noun, verb, adjective, everything has come. Was that 3 million years back on International Linguistic Conference to develop and design this? Is it coming under some syllabus created? All these things came, it evolved. From where it has evolved? Because we are all born with the same language, same linguistics. Thereafter, mother tongue comes. Each one's mother tongue. Is, that is the best source of our exploiting the linguistics potential within us, so that then only we can connect with the environment. Without linguistics, you cannot connect with your mind also. Only way for you to communicate with your mind is through language. That is why we are singing prayers. Prayer is not meant for God, it is meant for us. But people say that it is meant for God, and we behave as our whatever we want to say. We say Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi's great thing is not to tell lie. It's Mahatma Gandhi's, not mine. That's why I continue to tell lie. See, it is not mine. And this sense of ownership, if it is not coming in our response, responding, language is language is not helpful. That's what I say. We are very capable and we can grow through our linguistics. That is neuro linguistics. Then Without developing a pattern and a habit, mental habit, psychological habit, we cannot save our energy. The first function of our organism, any living organism, is to protect itself, to save the energy and generate surplus. Any living system. The are plants are bearing fruits not for human being Ramalingam eating mango fruit, but to give a seed so that I will throw it, another mango tree will come. See, and cow yearns to suckle more than the calf wishes to suck. Cow, cow, cow secretes more milk than what calf can take, so that Ramalingam takes coffee and tea. So always some generative thing is happening in any living system, whether we want it or not. We become degenerative because of our belief system. This is the basic thing of neuro-linguistic programming. Change the belief, your potential will be reached and exploited. Once the potential is increased, results will automatically come when you know how to use your potential. We know potential is nothing but power, according to me. It's a simple word. Of course, from where you have taken it, I cannot say. If you are finding it somewhere from Google, please tell me also. See, power means energy. Energy focused, it becomes force. Then the energy is becoming force and you apply it on yourself or in your human environment, then it is power. Because power moves. Energy itself may be kinetic energy. It may not move. It will remain only. It will keep you alive only. Any energy will keep you alive only. 98.4 degree. It will keep you alive. And once that heat, energy, magnetic energy, all the 12 energies of our body, this is what is yoga, this is what spirituality, this is what a divine, everything is dealing with the energy only, universal energy, internal energy, unit energy, micro energy, macro energy, all this. And this energy becomes power depending upon your awareness of your potential. The potential that is accessed for application. That is the education policy. That is where the how part, your coinage of 9 house. Actually, I was saying how from unconscious truth is revealed so strongly from you. And you are not planned to use so many how words. How it is used, how are they going? And you see, if a record is played again, you will know, you will be surprised. Without your planning, how you have used the how you have used the how, and how has become more important in modern world of learning and growing. In learning and knowledge, this is the basic difference. This is the most important difference.
Yes. So
That's why.
actually, the idea of how is
Yes, sir.
the means to achieve something. So
Yes, sir.
essentially, and why and what, I guess, belongs to the realm of ends. I mean,
Yes.
the state variable. So how is it possible that we can have a large scale application, uh,
Yeah.
scalable application of NLP principles,
Yeah.
which can be imbibed by the academia to enhance, whatever these students are doing in
Yeah.
terms of creating better understanding of subjects, being better professionals, being better citizens, being more ethical. Is how can that be done?